Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 269. Today it is me and Vic and Mike, and we're talking about how we learn woodworking, how we read magazines and books and watch videos, and how we absorb the information and how we intend others to absorb the information, maybe. We also talk about the things that we can't walk away from in woodworking stores and lumber yards. It's a fun episode. It's Vic and Mike, so you know we're laughing and having a good time. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone about the project guides on finewoodworking.com, in particular, the Shop Machines Project Guide. We just reorganized it and found a lot of articles and videos that should have been in there the first time around, and they're constant work in progress for us. They're, a living document, if you will, and we're always adding to the project guides and trying to make them better. And the Shop Machines one just got a really nice overhaul. So if you want to check that out, head on over to finewoodworking.com/project-guides, and you'll see all of the project guides, and check out the Shop Machines Project Guide. As many of you listeners know, I've been diving in there a lot recently, setting up my machines, and I think it's probably something that all of us should be doing. All right, we've got a fun episode for you. We'll get started after a brief word from one of our sponsors. Over 20 years ago, a couple of woodworkers decided to put together a woodworking club and share their passion about the period furniture they built, and the Society of American Period Furniture Makers was founded. Since that day, SAPFM has grown to an international group of woodworkers with 26 chapters in 3 countries, all sharing their love of building furniture. With a mission to provide the best in fine furniture making education, members have unlimited access to an extensive library of online resources, the annual conference, quarterly e-newsletters, and the annual journal publication. No matter where you are in your woodworking, there's something here for you. So join us today at sapfm.org, sapfm.org. The Society of American Period Furniture Makers. We are all furniture makers, period. All right, let's jump right in, because I think this first question, it's a simple question, but I think we should complicate it.
Excellent. Just what people are listening for.
All right, from John. I signed up for the unlimited membership. Thank you, John. There is a lot of great info there, but I feel like I'm not getting the most out of it. I was wondering if you could do a segment, YouTube video, or bonus episode on how to get the most out of all the unlimited membership has to offer. I have tried looking at some old magazine issues on the Fine Woodworking app on my phone, and it says I have to pay to look at the old issues and special issues, like shop issues that came out a few months ago. Am I doing something wrong? No, you're not, and I'll explain that in a minute, John. There's also a vast amount of information. It can be hard to find what I'm looking for. That might be more of a product of ADD than the website. I feel like my dog at the park when he sees a squirrel sometimes. Bandsaw setup article? I tried to do that with the squirrel thing.
Yeah, with the Doug voice.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again, and keep up the good work. So I'm just going to go through some web guy, logistic, customer service mumbo jumbo, right? But then I kind of want to talk about how y'all go about finding information in general and where you get information. But so first off, John, the phone app and the iPad app, I know it's confusing, and we're constantly working on ways of clarifying this, and we're not always very good at it. Just come right out and say that. The phone app and the iPad app are a mirror to the magazine subscription you have. When you start an unlimited membership, you get sent magazines from that point until your membership ends, right? The phone app and the iPad app are a mirror of that. So you get, if I started a magazine subscription right now, I would get issue 297 in the mailbox. If I started an unlimited membership, I would get issue 297 in the mailbox, and I'd get issue 297 available to my app. The app is not the archive. The archive is available online. So if you went from your phone to finewoodworking.com and went to digital archive, you would be able to read every single magazine. we're working on a thing to clarify all of that for people when they sign up. But that's right off the bat. You're not doing something wrong. We're possibly communicating it wrong, and I apologize for that.
Now, Ben, if you have an iPhone or an iPad and you go onto a browser,
yes,
and then go to the website, you should be able to see all that, right?
Yes, but if you download the Find Woodworking app,
Oh, right.
then that is a mirror to your subscription.
I didn't even know there was an app.
No, I didn't either.
See.
I should know that.
I'm going to.
One of you should know that.
And it's not big.
But I will also say though that the phone is, because the app is the magazine, like the PDF layout of the magazine, and the phone, an iPhone or whatever, is not a real great device for displaying that large format content.
Look at that.
The iPad version is, I really enjoy the iPad version of most magazines. And so that's where I would intake that if I were you. I remember back in the day, even before I worked here, I used to get on my phone and download the issues for when I was like really bored. And it worked, it got you through a bus ride or something, but it's not the best way of absorbing the content. Now also, John, it has been on my list forever to do a video of like, hey, welcome to the Find Woodworking website. Here's the best way of using it. Here's how to find this. Here's how to do that. And I'm going to do that. I'll do that real soon, John. So I just want to get that out of the way too. Because every website has its subtleties. And there's a lot of like click here, click there, that would be good for me to put down in a video form for everyone. So I will get.
Well, I remember reaching out to you, Ben, maybe like a year ago to say, listen, I know this article exists. I just don't know how to get to it. Right. And so you gave me some pointers on how to search the archive. And that was like so helpful.
Yeah, it's, every website has like a search function, right? And an algorithm. And there's always a way to work that algorithm to find what you need. We also have the online magazine index, which is my way. Like if somebody's like, hey, I want to find an article on this, and it was in the magazine, that's the best way of doing it. So that's findwoodworking.com/magazine-index. And that is like, it's done from a spreadsheet from our copy editor, Liz Knapp. And there is no algorithm involved. It is a searchable index, if you will. There's, she declares, these are the words, these are the things, this is what you're looking for. And that gets loaded into a part of the website. And that's the best way of finding magazine articles. But that doesn't include videos, and that doesn't include blogs, and that doesn't include all sorts of things. For me, the best way of getting the most out of unlimited memberships is, you're getting the magazine, and then you've got access to, hundreds of hours of, for me, the video workshops were, before I started working at the magazine, that was like, when I discovered video workshops, I was in. I was sold. I was done. That's probably the most powerful aspect of unlimited to me. And now we've got the project guides, which I don't want this to turn into an ad for Unlimited, because so many people write in and say that they joined Unlimited because of the podcast. And I really appreciate that.
Cool. The only thing for me is if you're looking at the magazine or articles online, you're often scrolling through them one page at a time, and that kills me because I think
I
in
lay them
terms
out.
of, I think in terms of a 2-page spread. So you open the magazine, you see 2 pages. That's a really wonderful format to communicate information.
Yeah.
And just about all the information in every page of content in the book, except for maybe departments, which are single page separated by ads. But the articles, everything is designed to be read across a spread. So if I'm only seeing 1 page and only seeing half of that, it probably doesn't make sense. And I understand you got to like zoom in to read stuff, but please, just for me, just like look at the spread and then go ahead and dive in.
Which you can look at the spread on the iPad.
Yeah.
You know, you can do side by side on the iPad. But yeah, that's an interesting one too, because you lay out the magazine that way, and online in general does not get along with that.
Does
you
not.
know? So we are working to constantly do more deciphering, if you will, where it's a linear layout kind of for the website. But so much of the beauty of fine woodworking is in the layout and the presentation of, because Vic, you got to see Mike like try and like lay out, or not try and lay out, but like point out where a photo flows and everything. And it's an art form to you and John Tetro, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very simple on the surface, but very complex to get there. And you know, a few things is that as you're looking at a page, is I want you to be able to grasp what's on a page in like 10 seconds. So you read the major heads, you scan the photos, and like, okay, I get it to this level. And then each caption has a little bold sentence at the beginning of each caption. So if you read just that bold lead in for all the captions, that's another level of information you've dove down just a little bit deeper. And then if you read the captions along with the photos and don't even read the main body text, then you begin to have an understanding. And then like 5 years later, when you actually want to build that shop-made router table, and you actually read the text start to finish and look at the photos and the illustrations, hopefully you've got what you need. So it's that layers of accessibility that allow you to get it really quickly. Like I remember like when my mom would look through an issue and say, wow, I really understand how to carve a little ball and claw foot. It's like, yes, because we're conveying information just on that level. And then the second thing is that it's the understanding that every piece of information I give you is going to prompt a question. Yeah, but what about, and I want to be able to answer that assumed question with that next piece of information. So it's almost like tumbling down a hill. I'm going to tell you this. What about this? Well, this, and before you can even think, what about this? I'm going to tell you the next thing you need to know and the next thing and the next thing. Ideally, that's, you know, we don't always get there, but that's the intent. And so that spread layout. So if I have an 8-page article, I've got 4 2-page spreads, and each spread is going to be a concise amount of information encapsulated in that section there. And then you move on and there's another section, another section, another section. So, yeah, that's just what, I mean, it is an art. I think it's maybe like Japanese flower arranging. You know, it looks just like a stick in a vase and it's crooked, you know, but like to get to that elegant simplicity, it takes a lot of thought to go into that. So
I don't know if I've ever heard you explain it that directly. And that's exactly the way that I absorb the magazine. I get it. I flip through it and well, I get PDFs in advance because I'm important. And but like I get it and I flip through it and I just go, huh. And it's like, I'm not reading. I don't open up page 6 and start reading beginning to end. It's not a book. It's not a linear thing. I flip through And then I go back and then I read cut lines, and I take it a little bit more. And then if I'm really into something, I read the actual manuscript, the thing. So it's
the gray stuff between the photos. That's as art directors
the
refer
wordy
to it.
bits.
Yes.
The Ipsum.
Yeah, the Ipsum. Yeah, so it's not necessarily a linear thing where a video you start watching and you take in the whole thing as you go, So yeah, that's a really good way of describing it. Which, I mean, I guess you should have a full handle on what your intention is there, Mike.
Ideally.
But sometimes it's hard to put that
Tetreault
into
does.
words.
Yeah. What about you, Vic? Like all right, so let's talk grander.
Okay.
When you are looking for, because I know you're not just doing things that you know how to do already, right?
Yeah, that gets boring real quick.
Yeah, I would assume that you're curious and wanting to try new things. What do you do? Like where are you drawing your information from normally?
Well, the first thing, if it's a new technique or something that I've not done before, I learned from Michael Fortune years ago that almost anything you want to know about technique-wise and how to build something is in Ernest Joyce's Encyclopedia of Furniture, or furniture making, or whatever it's called. And so, because I remember one time I was, the first time I did sliding doors, and Michael Fortune just happened to be at Rosewood that week, and he joked and he said, he threw out a page number, 147. And I'm like, come on. So I reached back, grabbed the copy of it, flipped it open. I'm like, there's 3 different ways in here. And he's like, pick one. I'm like, okay. So, when it comes to that sort of thing, if it's something like completely new, like I've never, ever done it before, and it's not like a matter of a technique or, or whatever, I usually start with YouTube, to be honest. I find that I learn better that way. Seeing stuff happen and seeing stuff being made, although it is also a double-edged sword because some YouTube videos are well produced and others are not. And if I find myself like forwarding a lot because it's like, make sure you smash this button and hit the subscribe and and self-promotion and all that other stuff, which is why I'm not on YouTube, because I'm not good at that. But like I find lots of kind of interesting stuff. Mike Farrington, he's done some pretty cool videos, and I mean, his dry sarcasm is kind of entertaining as well.
Yeah.
But I usually go to YouTube first, or if it's something sort of specific, like style specific or something like that, then I have a pretty decent collection of books, which is still sort of my favorite way to look at stuff and to look for stuff. Because at this point, I don't really need the how-to. I just need the sort of inspiration.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, I can work out how to do it. And if like a Japanese woodworker 1,000 years ago did it this way, well, chances are I don't have the equipment and the tools that they used. So I'm going to, figure it out. But a lot of times for me, it's about inspiration. And so in that case, like Instagram is awesome. I go through and I find people that I like. I remember so you go on Mike Pekovich's IG, and then what I do is I go and I check to see who Mike Pekovich follows. What influences him?
Yeah.
Right?
It's a bunch of ceramicists.
Right. Which is cool, which is great, right? Because he figures out how to make cool furniture to hold ceramics. It's fantastic. So I look for sort of that sort of level. If I really like something, like we were talking on the last episode about Esherick and how it's, completely informed the way she works.
Yeah.
And you see that. And if you like her work, then you go and see what she was inspired by, and then kind of go from there. So that's like, there's I guess there's different types of research. There's like how to research, and then there's inspirational research. And so the two are different. So different sources.
I found so like, as well stated, I'm into lutherie, which is woodworking, which is a form of woodworking. And when I am trying to build a ukulele, I've yet to find a source that is like a step-by-step guide. Do this, do that. It's like, I feel like every book tries to fit in like, here's how to build 4 ukuleles simultaneously. It's like, oh, you could do this or you could do that. And I'm the type of person who, if I'm going to go direct to information, I want like, do this, next, do that, next, do this, So I kind of, I watch YouTube and I do look at these books, but I kind of just go through it. And then when I find a problem or a situation where I don't know what to do, then I go to one of those books and look for that specific answer. It's the same way, Ernest Joyce, it's like, how am I gonna handle this angled mortise and tenon in this, chair railing or chair seat? And it's like, okay, well, you could search out every single way of doing an angled mortise and tenon, or you could just go to like one trusted source and hopefully you have the tooling that they're recommending, And if you don't have a hollow chisel mortiser, okay, well, how can I change this to work with a mortise or with a router and a template? Or how can I do this by hand? Or how can I, and I think some people get really, really hung up with, well, that person has that tool. I need to have that tool. Right. No, that person is excavating wood with this tool. You don't have that tool. How can you go about excavating the wood the way that they are and wind up with the same thing at the end of it? And from emails and questions that we get, I think some people get so wrapped up on exactly how someone does something or exactly this measurement that you don't absorb why they're doing something and what the end goal is. And that's all that this mortise needs to match what your tenon is, or that tenon needs to match what your mortise is. And that's it. It doesn't matter what the measurement is. So I try and like absorb the grand concepts more than anything. And especially if I'm looking through a magazine, I will be, flipping pages and go, and if I see, oh, look at how someone's using that tool, that might work. I'm never going to build this project, but that would be a great way of doing this other thing. Or that would be a great way of solving this problem that I might have, or I did have, or whatever. And I try not to take this information too literally, because I think you get much less out of it if you're just looking for exactly the answer. Even though I just said I like step-by-step things, so I'm a liar.
But when you talk about chairs, you were saying like, how to make an angled and splayed, connection of some sort. And like a lot of times, like you have a lot of room, like in a chair rail or whatever. And so sometimes it might be beneficial to use a double mortise and tenon, right? Just to increase your glue lines, right? Because, and if you don't know that two big or two regular sized tenons is better than one big fat tenon, right? Like that's a great piece of information to glean from there. It's like, okay, that joint will be stronger as a result of the extra glue surfaces, right? But if they're using a multi-router or a panta router or a, whatever, right? That part to me is not what I'm actually after. What I'm looking for is the fundamental. And you're right, Ben. A lot of people get it like, and I mean, I know we have a sharpening question coming up, and sharpening is a prime example of that, where it's like, listen, you're trying to get two flat, highly polished surfaces to meet at an edge with the smallest radius possible. That's what you're trying to do when you're sharpening, right? It has zero to do with the machine, the jig, the media that you sharpen on. It has nothing to do with that. You can pick any one of those mediums or any one of those machines and get the net result, as long as you understand fundamentally what you're trying to do. And so that's what I look for, is if I don't know what the fundamental lesson is there, that's what I look for. And then adapt it in a way that, I have here.
Yeah, I mean, that's, all those different layers of information you need, from how do I cut that joint? How do I cut the joint with the things I have or with the machines I don't have as a workaround? And then, what's the anatomy? Why am I using that joint? What's the best joint to use in this situation? Okay, how do I make that joint? And then you look at furniture you're inspired by, you see a really cool piece, and you see the outside of it, but it's like, what is that inside? How do I get from cutting a mortise and tenon to ending up with a piece of furniture that looks like the way I want it to look? And in a way, it's a big challenge, but for me, I think that's the great thing about it, is there's so many different layers of knowledge that builds on each other, that the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn, but also the easier everything gets because you start to intuit. Like you said, Vic, once you get your techniques down, all you really need to know is, okay, what joint do I need? What's the best joint to use in this circumstance? And then it's like, okay, I can get there. So you're skipping over a lot of those layers. I'm kind of the same thing. I think the more experience you are in making, the less you need to know how to cut a mortise and tenon or a specific joint. I think the more you're interested in looking at finished pieces of furniture as inspiration. That's where, when we were publishing Home Furniture magazine, where it was pretty much just finished pieces, maybe a joinery detail here and there. And that was the one, having woodworked for quite a while, that was my favorite magazine, because that was like all frosting, no cake. It was just like all the good stuff. And I think that's what Instagram is really good for. I think you can really mainline a ton of furniture designs from all over the world. And I think you can increase your sensibility, your ability to look and assess something the more things you look at. If I need to learn about a technique that is new to me, it's definitely the Fine Woodworking Archives. For one reason, it's like, oh, I know Michael Fortune had a great article on steam bending tips, I think 10 years ago. And I want to do a half-blind miter dovetail, so you see the pins and tails on one face and nothing on the other adjacent face. Michael did an article on that based on a back cover he did, and Chris Gochner did the same thing in a different way on the sideboard, more recently on the front cover. I'm going to look at both of those things and figure out the logic behind each one, and then sort of figure out what's working best to me. If I want to do, tapered sliding dovetails, not something I do often. I know a handful of authors have covered that in different ways, and I like seeing multiple methods for getting there, not just necessarily. I don't want one person to tell me, hey, here's 3 ways to do it, pick yours. I sort of like to see 3 different people do it the way they do it. And then I have sort of a soup to nuts process that makes sense to one person. So it's not necessarily picking and choosing my methods. It's sort of watching different methodologies and see what clicks, what tools they have, what methods they're using that make sense, and then go from there. So, and then, basically every article that gets printed in Fine Woodworking, say we print 20 to 25 images in the finished article, we typically shoot 500 or 600 or 700 images to end up with those 25. And to have access to our photo archives, and I can go back and look at the 500 photos.
No.
Into building that. So
That may be
just
specific to your own particular sickness,
Yeah.
Mike. I don't know that.
no, but
a lot of them are just Steve Latta staring down the editor. Trust me.
Oh, the Steve Latta glare. Like, do you have this shot yet? How long do I have to sit here? So, no, but I was thinking that might, I've always thought that it would be a cool feature to be able to allow people to access just larger archives of photography. No captions, no, all you're doing is just looking, click, click, click. And even just doing that, it can kind of deepen your understanding for certain things. We haven't gotten around there because we do want to get rid of all the Steve Latta glare pics or the 27 exposures where the lights didn't fire and you just have a black square. Or, you know what, never mind, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it this way. So there would be a lot of editing, but I don't know.
Well, then you can play really cool games like guess the lighting setup.
Yeah, yes.
Because I do that with photographs, and that's why I like the double truck layout of the magazine articles, because like it's so, yes, you get all the cool flow, but then it's like, okay, how did he light that? And it's like, what's he using there? Oh, he's got a backfill light right in there. And like you start to play that little game, which I think if you're a photographer, you do that. Ever since I remember, I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but when one of the first times we met in person, I asked you to critique the photography in my first book.
And live,
yeah, and you were very hesitant at the beginning, and I said no. I said I want the truth. I don't want some varnish. So anyway, so then you really friggin' lit into me, but no, I just kidding. It was good, and you know what? It was like some of the lighting sort of advice that you gave, was spot on. And so then I sort of now spend more time looking at the lighting in different photographs and stuff like that, which kind of sucks because then it ruins the photos for you because you're solely looking at them, with like f-stop numbers in your head and like all that other kind of stuff. But, but yeah, I think like having extra photos, you're right. You're stuck with a certain, like you have like a finite amount that you can put in the article. But man, if there was like different angles of the shot that ended up being in the magazine, man, oh man, that would be awesome. Because sometimes that just like a hand position change or whatever, like that just kind of like, oh, I get it. And then, or you can come up with something else. So that'd be cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, we're not close to offering something like that. Every time I think about it, the more you think about it, the more you realize, okay, never mind, I've got real work to do. I'll put this off to the side. But yeah, we're just sitting on archives of, hundreds of thousands of woodworking photos that nobody gets to see except for people who have access to that archive photo server. So I don't know.
But even candid shots like the death stare, or if somebody was like, did something silly or whatever, like I think that would be cool because like then it sort of further humanizes the people who are writing these articles, and you realize that, even Mike Pekovich drops something off of his bench once in a while, or whatever, like stuff happens, like we know like Ben is like, he's constantly dropping everything. Yeah.
Did you say I'm aggressively dropping everything?
No.
Oh, okay.
Constantly. Yeah.
Well, it's the art Instagram early on was I would dig through a lot of the photos archives.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time. But Mike, you said something that, getting back to the unlimited thing that we're working on, is looking at it. So I think readers and website members or whatever, or even you watching a YouTube video, they might look at a thumbnail and say, well, I'm not going to build that thing. And 90% of all woodworking content is not really about the project. The project is the carrier, right?
Right.
It is the thing that we have to it's the plate that woodworking how-to techniques are delivered upon. And so one thing that we are actively trying to get better about and do more of is sit there and say, okay, half-blind miter dovetails. Oh, well, Chris Gochner did it in this project article. All right, let's try and make that an easier to find thing if somebody's looking for half-blind miter dovetails. But all that said, I think some of that onus is on the recipient as well to catalog. If you are flipping through a magazine and it's a period, it's a federal style period piece, and you don't make federal furniture and you don't like federal furniture, that's okay, because I guarantee you there is 20 things in there that you don't know or that you can learn from.
Right.
So it's like, don't necessarily look at a project on YouTube and look at it like, oh, I'm going to sit down and learn how to build this thing. Because first off, you're not going to, because no one can put that much information in a YouTube video or a magazine article or a whatever, You're there to absorb the information given to you, and the project is just the wrapping, So that's one, I read this Luthier magazine, and they're all a bunch of weirdos. I'm telling you, like, they're crazy. But I go through it, and I was on a flight the other week. I was reading this magazine, or this article, and I was like, this guy's insane. There's no way any of this is worth it at the end of the day. And he thinks this guitar sounds better. And like, sure, whatever. But it was like, it was chasing this rabbit hole to see, like, how far is this guy going to go? And in that journey I took in this article, there were so many little tidbits. They're like, oh, that's a really smart way of cutting this small little piece, because he's cutting individual saddles for each acoustic guitar string. And he thinks it's doing, and it's like, no, it's not. And like, to me, if it doesn't sound like a Gibson J45, what's the point anyways? But like, those are the little things that don't make sense to you, but there's pearls in there. So I think everybody needs to be open to reading and absorbing things that might not seem worth it at the onset, but are usually
I
worth
purposefully do that, though. I look for stuff like that where it's just like completely weird, or it's like a different genre, like altogether.
Yeah.
Or even if it's something like super simple, right? Like the first Fine Woodworking Live I went to when I was working with Veritas, I think Mike did a talk on the block plane. And I can't remember who I was talking to. I said, yeah, I think I'm going to go take in Mike's thing on the block plane. And they're like, really, Vic? Do you need to learn how to use a block plane? I said, well, no. I know how I use my block plane. Yeah. I want to see how Mike Pekovich uses his block plane. And then I walked out of there with like a page and a half of notes, because I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I've never done that one before. And so I like, it's those things where, like, you would think that, like, if your goal is to learn as much as possible and to like kind of be exposed to as much as possible, then that's what you do. Like, I love watching people cut dovetails, right? Because everybody does it differently. And every time I watch somebody, even if it's like somebody who's fairly new at dovetails, they may do something a certain way, or they may have picked up something from someone else, and it's like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to apply that. I'm going to try that.
I have filmed God knows how many people cut dovetails. And every single one of them has delivered a mind-blowing moment to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it might be one, but you add all those up, and it's a big thing. And I don't even cut dovetails, really. But like, every single time I'm behind the camera with somebody, there's always something that I swear to God, Mike can attest. I'm sitting behind the camera going, like making this big mind-blowing face, because even giving the amount of woodworking media I intake professionally, there's still so many things every day that happen. It's like, wow.
So true.
So, yeah. All right. I think we covered that one.
I think we could
minutes, yeah.
keep going. I think we just need to put an artificial stop. And Stop talking. Next question.
Yeah.
'Cause, yes.
All right. Well, yeah, let's take a break. Here's a message from Gary Rogowski of the Northwest Woodworking Studio about their online mastery program.
Thanks, Ben. Our online mastery program will graduate its first students this summer. We moved to this new online format when the world changed. But for 20 years now, our mastery program students have designed and built great furniture. The OMP now trains folks from around the world. This is a 2-year immersion. We meet weekly for 3 semesters each year for lectures, videos, and discussions. Design topics range from 14th century Renaissance design to Charles McIntosh to modernist furniture icons. We cover hand and power tool use, drawer and case construction, hand-cut dovetails, coopering, coving on the table saw, chair design, and we finish with a 3-drawer signature piece. Over these 2 years, folks design and build 11 pieces of work. Now, this program takes on all levels, but true beginners, anyone with the gumption to deepen their understanding of the craft and commit to building great work. The requirement is to work out of your own shop with your tools and a good internet connection, along with a camera, so you can join our class each week on Zoom. Invest in yourself. Invest in your education. Please go to our website, northwestwoodworking.com, all spelled out, for more information. Thanks very much.
So who wants to go first with segment Potpurri?
Vic, you got something?
I'll go.
Well, it's funny.
All right.
Last time my first time recording on the last episode, Ben pulled out this like totally weak move by like doing a Mike Pekovich, and he what was your
I said my all-time favorite tool of all time for this week was practice.
right? And I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, not to be outdone by Ben,
Never.
I'm going to say that the best tool you can buy is permission.
Oh, goodness.
And here's what you need permission for. You need permission to screw things up.
Good.
You need permission to make mistakes. You need permission to try something new and not beat yourself up over the way it turns out. Because if you do that, then you will master the cubist movement, but that's about it, right? And so I spend a lot of time teaching students, and it seems like the first thing that people want to do is they want to learn how to make a dovetail box. And so it's like, okay, but I'm going to warn you, your first box is likely going to turn out like garbage. And you need to be okay with that, because learning, there's a lot that's going into what you're doing here, right? There's marking and measuring, there's chisel control, there's saw control, there's all of those sorts of things. And I said, like, I don't even own the first set of dovetails that I ever made because I was so upset with how they turned out that I threw them away. And I really wish I wouldn't have done that, because, man, if people could just see them, like if people could just, like, it looked like they were chewed out by a beaver. It was like brutal. And I wish people could see that, so that when they get their, 0.3 millimeter gap, and start to be like, oh, this is horrible, I'm going to take up knitting. It's like, listen, you got to give yourself permission to do and try and fail, because, and that has to come from you. Nobody can tell you that. I can't tell you that, no matter how much I sort of tell you, listen, like, it's okay. Like, this was your, how many dovetails have you cut before? Like, how many times have you hand planed a board by hand? You need to give yourself the permission to do that. And so don't try a new technique on something you're making for your mother-in-law. Don't make the first project you ever build, don't put some value on it like it's Uncle Morty's, cremation urn, right? Don't do that, because you're setting yourself up for failure. Instead, your first dovetail box should be used to house the 647 random Allen keys everybody has.
Right.
Right? that's what that box is for. And then you make it. And then the second one is for the 634 hex bit things you have from various sets over the years. And that's what that one's for. And then if that one starts to look okay, then maybe consider, at that point. But you gotta be cool with failure. You gotta be cool with filling it full of wood putty and painting it. You have to be, you just have to give yourself permission to do that. So that's my all-time favorite tool for today is permission.
That's cool.
And that's the last time I'm going to cop out with that.
I was going to say that. You stole my favorite tool of all time of the day. I don't know what to say now.
Did I really?
One of the things I wanted to talk about, one's a router plane. Okay, done. The next is, I think it's definitely going along the lines that you were talking about, Vic, in a slightly different way, and it has to do with the pressure and the expectations that social media and exposure to other people doing the same thing can have on you in a negative way. And I've mentioned this in the past where I played guitar in a band and sang and wrote songs and for a number of years and took myself pretty seriously and made a good go of it. And, but the thing is, I think today, if I looked at, there's like 1,000 guitar players way better than me on social media. And if I go on there and if I were to watch 1,000 guitar players play, I would say, I'm not even going to try. Like, who am I to even attempt that? So I think it would be, permission in a sense to give yourself permission to try something out, even if you think you're not qualified, you shouldn't be doing it, you're not good enough to do it. Just put your phone away. Stop looking at things. Go out and make something and don't worry about what's been made or who's made it or who's done a better job of it than you. So I definitely think it's that same thing. But I think it's great. There's a lot of exposure to things and let it inspire you, but don't let it inhibit you. Don't let it depress you to the point where I can't even attempt something because I'm never going to have that result. So I think that's a thing. That's something I preach, and I felt I was fairly immune to it, but I was actually working on something that was new to me. And it was something that I felt that I didn't have a lot of expertise in because it's not a technique I had tried before. And I was found myself not wanting to post pictures on it on Instagram, because not wanting to talk about it because I felt like I don't know what I'm doing. And it's just like, okay, just stop. Yeah, you know what you're doing enough to do it, and you're doing it. So don't worry that, yeah, but how I did it is probably not the correct way to do it. It's like, so it was funny. It was surprising to find myself in that same position where I thought, because of my experience and time spent woodworking prior to all of the social pressures, that I didn't have to worry about it. And it turned out like, no, that's, yuck, that is there. So yeah, it's tough to avoid. It's tough not to get inspired, but intimidated at the same time, and just keep the inspiration part, forget about the intimidation part, go out and make something and have a go at it. And give it to your mother-in-law if it doesn't turn out well.
Depends what you think of your mother-in-law, I suppose. Which we won't get into.
I agree with both of you about, I'm not going to say permission, but I've struggled with all of that. Every bit of it. And just,
we all do.
Yeah, it's just, and last time, I talked about practice, and I think that was the same thing where it's like, for me, it was like just having the forethought to mill up extra stock, knowing you're going to screw up some, and sometimes permission is milling up extra stock. Sometimes permission is just saying, all right, I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing it for Instagram too. And I've backed way the heck off Instagram. And I think that's part of it is I felt like everything I was posting was like, you know, kind of getting wrapped up in that whole thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm out here for me. But sometimes permission is not taking yourself seriously. And I had a smooth move that was hilarious to me that I have to do a video to go a little bit more in depth on a technique in the new issue. And I was hoping to have it done today. And that's not going to happen because I'm not very smart sometimes. And the shop is in this very awkward state right now, the fine woodworking shop, where it's like we have the big tools, but we don't have the little tools. So you find yourself like hitting these awkward barriers where it's like, oh, I don't have this router bit. I can't do this thing, you know? And in general, I am a fan of 1/2-inch router bits, not 1/4-inch router bits. If I can get a 1/2-inch shank router bit, that's what I want. I became obsessed with the concept. Oh, and we lost our 1/4-inch shank or our 1/4-inch collet for our router table. So I decide, okay, I need to get a router bit to do this thing. It needs to be a top bearing, flush trim, you know, pattern bit, template bit, whatever. I needed to, I had a 3/4 inch and it looked a little risky on camera. So I wanted a 1/2 inch and we don't have our 1/4 inch shank, collet. So I want a 1/2 inch shank collet and I go on all of the websites. I'm looking for a 1/2 inch shank, 1/2 inch diameter pattern bit. And I don't find one at the local home at the, you know, at like Rings End, which is our, you know, high-end building supply. I don't find one there. I didn't see one on Woodcraft's website. So finally, after like an hour and a half of searching, which I could have done the video in this hour and a half. After an hour and a half of searching, I just go up to Woodcraft because our local-ish Woodcraft, they also get router bits directly from Whiteside. So they have a pretty solid selection of like off the catalog router bits. And so I go, they're going to have it. I go up there. I'm looking at every thing. And I got one of the guys helping me. And out comes Bob Van Dyke. He goes, hey, what are you doing? I was like, because his school's behind the Woodcraft. I go, I'm looking for a white whale of router bits. I don't know why I can't find this. No one has this. I want a 1/2 inch shank, 1/2 inch diameter template or pattern bit. He goes, well, that can't exist. Like that.
I was wondering when we were going to get there.
He just looks right at me and says, well, that can't exist. And it hit me like that. That can't exist. Where are you going to put the bearing, a 1/2 inch bearing on a 1/2 inch shank, you dummy? And it was just an immediate realization. I'm an idiot about this. And that's it. Buy the 1/4 inch shank bit, get a new 1/4 inch collet for the shop, and get it done. It's like I became so hung up on this one little thing that I didn't think, could this thing exist? Like if you don't find it in any of the woodworking catalogs, there might be a reason.
Yes.
That's
You're
pretty
not
awesome.
smarter than everyone, Ben Strano. So
Yeah, I understand that. If you have to look too hard for something, maybe you shouldn't be looking for it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
you probably
there's
don't
a
need
reason.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another way to go about it. Yes.
I became transfixed on this though. And it was partially due to, we didn't have the collet. We didn't have if we had a 1/4 inch collet, I've got the bit right over there. You know, in my personal stash, I would have just made used the 1/2 inch diameter 1/4 inch shank bit, but whatever. So.
You know what was interesting was to watch Mike do the mental math in his head of all of the hours of time you wasted on company time trying to fit. You could just, like, remember the Bugs Bunny where he's doing like the air math? Mike's like, okay, Ben's not allowed to go shopping for anything.
Yeah. All right, we have to skip a question. We have to skip the sharpening question and go to the Ben went shopping question. Because we only have time for one more.
Okay.
Right? But this one has to be tied into that story of Ben went shopping. This question is from Chris. I try to be very conscientious with most of my woodworking related purchases, but a lot of time I find myself walking out of Woodcraft or a lumberyard with something that was not on my list. Be it a sale too good to refuse, the beckoning call of a shiny new tool, or a gorgeously figured piece of bird's eye maple, I have a habit of impulse buying. Not saying it is an overly bad habit, as my wife is supportive, but it is just an interesting observation. What is your most memorable woodworking impulse purchase? Tool, lumber, class, etc. This question was spurred on by seeing Mr. Strano check out at my local Woodcraft. After everything rang up, he turned around to the clearance section by the register and picked up a few more of the same item he was purchasing. I was totally not creeping, just behind him in line. First off, Chris, say hi next time. But, Mike, I have to explain this one, since it was on the company dime. I was buying floor mats for the shop, and I thought they were $50. And when I was being rung up, they said, oh, those are $20. And I was like, oh, I'm not buying 3 of these. I'm buying 5 or 6, and now I regret not buying all of them.
Wow.
So that's what happened there, Chris. I was trying to be conscientious, but it turned out they were really, really cheap and affordable, so I just piled up on them.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Do they work well? Because we have a slip issue with our floors in the new shop.
I'm tripping over them right now, like that. The edge is still curling up, but I think they work really well. Yeah, they were the Woodcraft.
The brown ones?
Yeah, you know, and they were $20 all of a sudden. It was like,
awesome.
No, I need to buy, and I should have bought every single one of them, I think.
I'm going to drive to Woodcraft right now and get some. That's a great deal.
Yeah. And I don't know if I realized that they were in the clearance bin, so now I'm worried that they're not going to be there next time. But my big, anytime I'm at the lumberyard, if I see a board of 8-quarter cherry with like perfectly straight grain wood, I'm buying it, and it's paid off. I'm well pleased with every decision that I've done that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's because, in terms of impulse purchases, a tool often isn't a good impulse buy. I think you got to kind of think about the tool you want for a long time before you get it. But wood as an impulse purchase is always a good idea. Yeah, I fully support going to the lumberyard and coming back with things you didn't intend to come back with, because there's no shelf life on a nice board, and it'll inspire you to make something later. So I love having stuff like that around.
What about you, Vic? I think you buy too much lumber.
I think I do. I think I'm like Mike. I think you go into the store and you go in there for what you were looking for. And I do things like, so one of the first classes that I teach students when we're working one-on-one it's a field trip. We go to the local wood store, and that's where I teach about rift sawn, flat sawn, quarter sawn, all that stuff, because it's all there, right? There's all these different examples and all these different species and like open and closed poured woods and all that other stuff. So it's fantastic. Problem is I end up pulling a piece out and going, yeah, so this is a great example of like 8-quarter rift sawn cherry. And then right away, the word legs pops into my head, and it's like, yoink. So I pull that out.
Yank it right out of the student's hand.
Right. You don't want this one.
This one. Yeah.
So, see how it's all straight and stuff? You don't want that. So that's too easy. But yeah, and I mean, like, last time I was there, I walked out of there with a 16-inch wide, 1-inch thick, 4-foot long piece of Swiss pear that was like, it's massive. And I'm like, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something.
Yeah.
And
that's
so,
awesome.
and it was a great price. And Swiss pear, it's like hand planing like butter. It's lovely. But yeah, I don't often do sort of like impulse hand tool or woodworking tool purchases. Although I did, at one time, I have a thing with marking tools, measuring and marking tools. I like them. I like how they look. I like how they work. And and as long as they're not like overly gadgety or, that sort of thing, like, like anything that does more than one thing, to my mind, is gadgety. And so I try to stay away from those. But I was at Handworks in Amana one year, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hamilton gauges. He makes those beautiful wooden gauges.
Yeah.
And I must have seen these gauges like for a couple of years, you know what I mean? Like looking at them like, oh, these are really cool. These are really cool. And so he had one that was made out of cocobolo with a bit of sapwood in it. And the last thing I needed was another marking gauge, but I snapped that sucker up because I was like, no, that's too. And I think that's kind of like the same thing with the wood, in that it's like, it was just too beautiful not to have. And so I bought it. And I didn't even look, I purposefully didn't look at the price, and I just handed him my credit card. And I was like, I'm just like, I don't want to know, because I know how much your normal ones cost. And when you're using a premium wood, I know it's going to be more. Just take my money. Take my money and I'll deal with it later. I'll cry about it later. But so that, that was like the closest I come to sort of impulse buying tools. I don't typically, it has to be beautiful, or it has to be awesome, or it has to be handmade, or it has to be, it has to be something special, non-pedestrian.
Yes.
My problem is the ones that I remember are the ones I almost impulse bought and didn't, and it still sticks with me. And there was a Vesper marking gauge at WIA 2015. It was like this little brass one. And the price was, at that point in my world, I couldn't do it.
Sure.
But now when I look back on it, I can justify that price. And it stings every time. Every time I need, did I say marking gauge? A bevel gauge.
Bevel gauge, yeah.
Sorry. Every time I need a bevel gauge, I think there should be that little Vesper right there. Right there next to this junky hardware store one, there should be a little Vesper one right here. And it would have cost you $140. And like now that feels like, inflation, all, that's a deal at twice the price probably. But it always stings me to this day. The only other thing that I can think of that was a true impulse buy, even though I totally had it worked out in my head. But when my wife told me she was pregnant, I went through the emotions and I was woo, 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 woo. And then that night at dinner, I said, I'm buying a bandsaw because I don't think I'll ever be able to justify spending this much $500 on a tool again. And she was like, yep, you won't be able to. And we just, so like I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew exactly what to do. I had done all of the work, but it was like, I just crossed this point in my life and now I have to do this now because it's never going to happen again. So
well, not never. Not never. My daughter just graduated university, and very fortunate that she turned a placement into a full-time job. And so after almost 22 years, she is officially off the dole. And I look around my shop and I'm like, what are we going to get next? Because now, now there's not this, I want to say symbiotic creature, but it's not really, is it?
No, it's parasitic, yes.
I mean, they give us love and hugs and all that other stuff, but it's hard to say that that's symbiotic. But anyway, yeah, so it's not forever, Ben. One day you will be able to, and you'll make more informed decisions too, because you'll have 20 years to think about it.
But that was an impulse buy because it was a reaction to something. So I'm calling that an impulse buy, Chris.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Anybody got other than wood? It seems like just wood is like the most impulsive. But I don't walk out. I rarely buy things for me. When I've got the company card, Chris can attest. I kind of went nuts. Sorry, Mike. We needed every single thing I bought. But
I'm kind of the same way. I take it back, Vince, in terms of impulse buys for tools. It's sort of a qualified impulse buys. Like you said, you kind of lust after something and it's just like, nah, I can't do it. And then the opportunity arises. It's like, okay, I'll take it. So I was trying to think. I think almost every tool or machine that I own that I really like, I probably spent more for it at the time than I really wanted to or was particularly comfortable. But I don't think of that at all now when I'm using it. I just like that hand plane, or I like that table saw or a bandsaw or whatever. But the one thing, kind of what you're talking about, Ben, where you got like a company credit card in a woodcraft store, it's when I'm prepping for teaching for the year, because to me, like a really awesome luxury. I used to buy like one of those drill bit sets with that angled top and the tin case that opens up and hinges, and you pull it out and you look for your 1/4-inch bit and it's not there.
Ever.
Or then it's just like, or the 16th inch bit is where the 3/16 hole is, and that's got, so the thing of like living with a single set of drill bits and never finding exactly what you wanted has been ingrained in me. But when I'm teaching, it's like I'll order a half a dozen 1/4-inch brad point bits from Lee Valley with those super sharp wings on them, and they're awesome. And I'll get another half dozen 3/16 because I like that size bit too. Or I'll order 4 white side 1/2-inch 1/4-inch shank 1/2-inch diameter pattern bit,
3,000 white side 3,000.
Or going on to McFeely's and ordering just a lot of screws in various sizes. That kind of stuff, or going to Klingspor and just ordering, a bunch of boxes of, 50 sheet boxes of sandpaper in every single grit. And I don't care if I have that grit in my shop at all. I'm just going to get me like a whole new set. To me, that's like a splurge, kind of a luxury impulse buy, but that's really fun. I like doing that sort of thing.
That just reminded me of this was an impulse buy. And my wife rolled her eyes at me. Stu Mac has my number with their tape deck. It's with the masking tape dispenser with 3 rolls wide, and the price is absurd. It's like $25, and like it seems like a stupid purchase, but every time I use it, and that, it's like my birthday, and like I get an email, a Stu Mac email. It's like, buy one, get one 50% off. I was like, well, yeah. And then I have one with no tape in it. I don't even know why why did I need 2 of them? I already had one, but
I'll give you 10 for it.
the shipping to Canada would be a little bit, but yeah. That tape deck was probably my most recent impulse buy. Yeah. So there you go. Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Thank you for hanging out with us for a little bit. If you have any questions you'd like answered on the show, please send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. This show exists because of your questions, and the conversation is guided by what you, the listeners, want us to do. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. Special thanks goes out to Jeff Rose for expertly mixing this episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening.
oh, sucks to be you.
Yeah, you're still there. It's just that all of your molecules have like scattered into different parts of the universe.